Hello, online world. This is Off the Record with Migs Bustos, and today we are going to talk basketball, Filipino American basketball, specifically tapping that FIL-AM talent. And for today, we have a very special group on board. We have guys from FILAM Nation Select, Coach CRIS GOPEZ, and the co-founder, of course, we all know him in Philippine basketball, Mr. Alex Cabagnot. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for
Hi, Migs. How are you guys? You're looking poggy over there, Christian Gopez.
Hey, you too.
today. But for our viewers, can you please educate us more on your group?
Yeah, so basically our organization pretty much entails pure Filipino basketball. And our goal here is to really give exposure and more importantly, just give the educational component to our families and also to our kids here in the U.S., including as well as Canada and anywhere around the globe. You know, if we could help improve the basketball talent level in the Philippines, I'm all for it.
How did this start? How did this all? What was the inspiration behind this, and when did you form this group, Coach?
Actually, you know what, Alex and I, we had our little own retreat. Basically, we were just talking about basketball, and we kind of came up with an idea about how we could, basically help kids in the U.S. to go transfer to, out in the Philippines. Basically, the exposure aspect of educating these families, those who have never been to the Philippines, those who have never seen what the PBA is all about, and also what the opportunities for the collegiate level is all about. That's basically what we're in it for, is to really educate and give that exposure and give the options for both FILAMs and FIL-Canadians and anywhere around the world the options to play in their home country or back home in the Philippines.
So, Alex, I understand that you are a co-founder with CRIS. Tell us your involvement and how did this all start from your perspective?
Well, Chris is being modest. Chris is being modest. He's actually the one that actually formulated this whole thing. We were actually, he came down for one of my championships, I guess in, ano ba yun, Chris, 2000, recently against Magnolia. So we had a great conversation. We stayed up all night thinking about what to do with Magnolia's offense and defense, and also formulating this whole FIL-AM basketball thing. He noticed, because actually, brief history, we actually have Edge International also. Chris and I, mostly Chris, because he's been more involved hands-on 100% of the time. He's been dealing with kids since 2007. We've been dealing with kids since 2007. Not just Filipino. We've been dealing with all races and ethnicities. So at this point, we just want to kind of filter and kind of funnel, maybe because there's been a lot of Filipino Americans and Filipino Canadians, Filipino Germans, as you could tell by the Stan Hardingers and the David Semerans, the Anthony Semerans, people that's playing for Ateneo. So we're just trying to funnel in a platform. And for me, it was just like trying to get connections here and just bridging the gap. I just bridge the gap. I get communication from coaches from here that want maybe players, especially I'm working with UP if UP needs a player, but not necessarily just with UP. I've been in communication with women's basketball, with Bacon Austria, with the women's national team. So I just pretty much bridge the gap and we do our part, but I don't want to take a lot of credit. Chris needs all the credit.
Alex, you mentioned about that night after that championship against Magnolia, and usually when we have ideas, when we have that light bulb above our heads, it's like, we can do this. And for you, when you were conceptualizing this idea with Chris, was it an easy sell in terms of, let's do it right away? How special is this for you to be able to bridge the gap and at the same time form this group and grow this group?
Oh, it's extremely special. I think most foreigners coming into the Philippines has an acrimonious feeling of not making it because, they hear so much things, a lot of rumors, a lot of obviously chismes, hearsay, third-party stuff that it's quite difficult. But with this platform, they could actually see and conceptualize and we could actually lay the foundation and give them a roadmap of what needs to be done. And that's actually one of the best things that you could do. Educating the parents, educating the players, not even necessarily about the skill. As you could know, you could have the best jump shot in the world, but if you don't have the paperwork to play for any of these UAAP or NC schools, you'll never get noticed or never get seen. So we just build that platform of bridging the gap from certain foundations and corporations, and hopefully we could get the players in and and get them involved as soon as possible, because it's too late when you're 22. The earlier the better, as what Chris would say. The earlier the better. So that's what we're doing. We're working on the grassroots at the moment.
Now, Chris, I know that you have this program called the Summit. So what is that all about? What is a program like, and what do you usually do in the process?
Well, basically, we started off with the regional camps. So just recently, we just hosted a regional camps for the Junior FILAM Nation, which consists of 10-year-olds all the way up to 14-year-olds. So those are considered the Junior FILAM Nations. And then we obviously had the high school level scheduled, but unfortunately with the COVID-19, we weren't able to proceed with that events. But the process is it's very simple. The goal is to have all these kids go through the regional camps. We had one in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Hawaii, which were all 3 great turnouts. And then our goal is to get the best of the best from each of these cities to attend the summit. Now, in the years to come, we're going to be obviously covering Seattle, Las Vegas, Arizona, Texas, New Jersey, New York, Chicago, Florida, and then move on to as well as Canada. So once we cover those bases for the regional camp, then we kind of direct them towards that summit. And the summit, that's when we really find those top players, who's really the best of the best, And our goal with the summit really is to invite the college coaches from the Philippines and have them check them out, because here in the States, we basically have something very similar in terms of what's called viewing tournaments. And so where coaches come out, they sit down for a whole entire, day and just really just watch these kids play. And then, they have a pencil and paper and take some notes down, and, they start the process of, recruiting at a young age. And if these Filipino college coaches can do that, I think they'll definitely have an advantage of starting to recruit in that process. So
I want to get this perspective from you guys. Now, I'll stay with you. Coach, and talking to coaches, what do scouts and coaches usually look for?
Well, I know in the Philippines right now, everybody's looking for height. I think that's the biggest thing right now, is obviously anyone that's over 6'5" and up. But I also believe that, if you got players that are 6'2", 6'3", that are pretty versatile, that could play, the guard position and even be as strong as any other 6'5" guys, I think they're worth looking at. And more importantly, I think just to really understand the recruiting, obviously they got to pass the eye test with the basic fundamentals of dribbling, passing, and shooting. I think that's very common for any coach to look at. But I think if I was a coach, I'm looking at someone who's a leader out there, who's vocal, and more importantly, just unselfish, unselfish basketball.
How about you, Alex, from a player and a coach perspective? If you were to be the scout, personally, what are your thoughts and what do you usually look for in a player?
Well, I would second height is a novelty that we're lacking at the moment. Not just height with like as big as Junmar or something like that. I'm talking about like 6'4", 6'5" with guard skills. So that's a novelty in itself. Like Gabe Norwood would be something that I would be looking for. Somebody that could play multiple positions and just increase our level, or increase our chances of winning. Obviously, if we have 5 Gabe Norwoods on the floor, it would be very difficult for us to be beaten. But eye test is one. Fundamentals is something that has to go in it, because fundamentals, it's so fast there. It's so fast, it's so fast. You have to make a quick impact. And that's what we do. That's what FILAM Nation does, is when you go to these camps or when you go to these showcases, we give you these it's like we give the kid a handout already, and he has to study those handouts. And when he gets to these camps, that's his exam, and he should already be like in his head conceptualize everything that's going to be done, everything that he needs to be done and needs to do. So also with the parents, also it's not just with players. The parents also needs to. We're dealing with kids, literally. 15, 14, 13. We're not just looking at the kids itself. We're also looking at if the parents are easy to deal with. I think Coach Chris would second with that. I mean, us dealing with difficult parents. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, definitely, I'd be a difficult parent too. But there's also guidelines and situations for both parties to be met.
Mhm. Now, Alex, you mentioned earlier about bridging the gap. From your perspective, what is the status quo? What is the map right now? And how can we build more roads to be able to, generate a clear path between America and other nations also to the Philippines?
Just to bridge the gap in a bigger, more abundant style of way, instead of doing it in a macro situation, we would actually do an app, a FIL-AM Nation app. And if you're a basketball coach, boom, you just press something. I don't know if I could disclose this yet, Chris. I know, I don't know if I could disclose it because this is something that we're actually working on. And you could just, like, if you're in the wrestling team, judo, as a coach, and you want to know the best judo players in the world, you click on this app, you buy this app, you click on it, you go down the list, you see their video, and you see it from your own tablet and your own iPhone or your own device. That's the best way we could bridge this gap, especially with the whole ECQ. Nobody's looking at anybody, personally, so this is the best thing that we could do to bridge the gap. It's in progress right now. Chris and I is doing a lot of work. Chris is doing 70% of the work, so I got to give him more credit for that. So we're working on that standards.
All right,
it's definitely not an easy task.
So that's okay, Chris?
Yeah.
All right, so now maybe one of the main objectives and the main goals is for FIL-AM talent to come to the Philippines to play, but the ultimate idea, Gilas Pilipinas, does that idea come to mind with the kids? And what is the desire for your goal for these kids to play for the Philippines?
I think the fact that we actually opened up the whole idea of playing for the national team and Gilas, and the more we actually promote Philippine basketball, I think kids are starting to become aware of what opportunities are available back home. And I think, just with kids obviously loving the NBA and seeing what they could, make, now they're starting to see, like, oh man, there's an opportunity back home in the Philippines to play college basketball and also being able to play in the PBA. And so a part of FILAM Nation and running this whole entire organization is just not only just finding the actual kids that are top dogs, but more importantly is also to educate them what it's really like. Because one of the things that we do at the regional camps, aside from just the basketball side of it, is to have a workshop with these parents and give them the information. Because especially with a lot of the second, third generation, a lot of them hasn't really even been back at the Philippines. A lot of them don't even know Tagalog. A lot of them don't even really have the culture of eating traditional Filipino food every day from their lolas, And so to be able to give them that information and say how important it is going to really rely on the parents to have them give that experience to their kids at some point. If they can go back home to the Philippines and pay a couple visits in the summertime, hey, they're already at an advantage, So,
now, before we get into the app, one of the main goals of your group, but how do you think we can grow this now? When ECQ is being lifted, when we go to the new normal, how do you think now the access of coaches, players to the Philippines, coaches to the States, how do you think we can grow that group and the relationship within the Philippine basketball industry?
I think the first step really is for all the college coaches back home in the Philippines to know who we really are. I mean, what our vision is, what the purpose is. Obviously, Coach Pat has he was the first one that really had hands-on, and based on his experience coming out here as a Gilas national coach as well as a NU head coach, he already said to himself, like, man, this is so easy for me now, because now he can rely on an organization like ours and just be able to funnel everybody all across the U.S., including Canada, to go to one location and for him to just watch these kids. And that's all he did. He watched them. We gave him a whole list of all the kids, their information from their names, their height, their weight, their phone numbers, the parents' information. So right there, it was already so simple for him to kind of start recruiting at that level. And then from there, he could take it back home and just start building a report. He can go ahead and add them to their his Facebook, his Instagram, his social media, and start emailing these parents, and that's what these American college coaches do. A lot of these college coaches here in the U.S., they already start at 7th, 8th grade, recruited. So that's the goal. That's the mindset that we want to build for these college coaches back home in the Philippines is start early. Let's start early. Let's get them to know these kids and start identifying. And we'll do our job to really start ranking them who is the top 25 for each age level.
Now for you, Alex, for this last question, what is your dream for this initiative?
Well, obviously, I dream big. I'm dreaming for something like we get in contact with the Olympic Committee, and we could deliver, or we could be in partnership with the Philippine Olympic Committee and just give them the talents that they need. Not just I love basketball and I want everything that's going to do with basketball, but we also know that we're reaching our plateau with how we're doing it now, and I'm trying to reach the pinnacle of our talent, our level, and be one of the best talented countries, especially in the gold medal count. Maybe in the Southeast Asian Games, not even the Southeast Asian Games, maybe in the Asian Games, maybe so we could provide all these athletes, because there's a lot of athletes, not just basketball. So I know Chris, we have these debates all the time of like, do it basketball or do we do more sports? I know more sports is kind of tedious, especially on his part.
Yeah.
Especially on his part, it's a lot tedious on his part. But I mean, that's our dream. That's our dream to cover every single sport that's available, every single Filipino with Filipino ethnicity. We cover all of them, not just for basketball, maybe for gymnastic, it may be for rowing, every single sport we want to cover. And hopefully we could be in partnership of the Philippine Olympic Committee, and we could draw these athletes, funnel these athletes, and work from there.
All right, so there you have it. Founders of FILAM Nation Select, coaches CRIS GOPEZ, and of course, Alex Cabagnot. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on Off the Record. And that has been our episode for today. Once again, this has been Off the Record with Migs Bustos, and see you in the next episode.